This is a brief report on our recent Gospel for Africa annual conference, which was held in West Africa, in the country of Ivory Coast, and in the city of Abidjan. And we had representatives from various nations join us for our conference. Brad Field and myself traveled up together. Brad Schmidt took a separate flight up. We arrived on the same day, Brad Schmidt about 20 minutes or so before us, and we were welcomed by Elijah and his team, and he had a brother that had joined them who had a television and radio station. The entire conference was streamed live. We were then taken from the airport. We went through to the Gospel for Africa headquarters, which is also where Elijah and his family live, and there we were welcomed by the Gospel for Africa team. We had a short time of worship, greetings. We were able to just greet the believers, encourage them with regards to the upcoming conference, and then we enjoyed a meal together, and then went to the Airbnb where we spent the following week. Each day we were up around 6 a.m. and usually got back around 10:30, 11, sometimes later p.m. Long days, lots of traffic. The congestion in the city of Abidjan is just insane. And so Elijah was leaving at 6 a.m. in the morning to get to us around 7. We would then be taken through to the conference, which wasn't a long distance, but would take us between 40 minutes and an hour each day in the traffic. The environment is very rough, high density areas, lots of pollution, litter everywhere. The temperatures were in the 30s. The humidity was high. The aircon in the car didn't work most of the time, and so we spent most of the time sweating and sucking in fumes from the traffic. But we had the most incredible conference together. The first day we obviously were welcomed by Elijah and his team. All the delegates were welcomed. Each one was given opportunity to be introduced. And then we began with an introduction to Gospel for Africa, shared our vision as Elijah had invited approximately 100 leaders or pastors from various independent churches. We had about 140 delegates at the conference over that week. We shared the vision with them and then gave a challenge concerning the times we're living in, the attack that we're under as the church, and we looked at, throughout the conference, the current challenges facing the church in Africa and what are the solutions to those challenges. And so we addressed particularly men and the responsibility that men have, that God has placed upon them, particularly for us in the church who have been called by God and have a great responsibility. We looked at personal character, godly character, personal leadership. We looked at the godly home and dealt with some basic principles around marriage and parenting, finances. We then looked at biblical leadership and what that should look like in a local church, the biblical structure of a church, the function of a local church. We had a look at the biblical foundation of the church, and so we addressed many pertinent aspects to the struggles that the church is facing in Africa. And then we concluded the conference with a challenge concerning evangelism and how that looks and then a message by Jim Nduruchi from Kenya as he concluded with Love in Action. And we then practically went out and demonstrated in the local communities God's love in action. The team that Elijah has is an incredible team. They are wonderfully knit together as a unit, each one having a responsibility. Elijah has split the country up into zones, and there's a zonal representative, and each of these men, even over the conference, had a responsibility, and so daily responsibilities were carried out. The conference just flowed so beautifully, and each person fulfilled that responsibility that they had. We thank God for that, and a wonderful example to the other nations as they saw Elijah and his team functioning the way that they did. A very, very good example to the other African nations. There was a brother John who prepared meals for us every day, really tended to our every need. An incredible brother that was just so focused and had just such a real purpose to his life. And even in visiting his church, we saw that come through. And so the conference went off very smoothly, as delegates had to be transported. The brothers from the different countries had to be transported back and forth every day. And just an incredible team that Elijah has in Ivory Coast. We then visited churches in the evenings, and those were incredible moments as the team would split up and would go to different churches. The two Brads and myself would go to the same churches every night, and we visited a number of churches each evening. We were so blessed as we arrived at those churches to such an incredible welcome from the people. They were so excited to see us, to have us there. The rejoicing was absolutely amazing. Wonderful experiences as they received us the way they did. We then had opportunity to share briefly with.
And in this place tonight, we find Jesus. We find his loving kindness.
This is where the Bradman's preaching at the moment.
We find that no matter where you live,
We're right in the middle of
where you are in the world,
like a dump,
the loving kindness
kind of
God
scrapyard, whatever this place is.
is better than life.
But incredible. And the love that these folk have for Jesus is absolutely astounding. With them, wonderful times of worship. And then at each of those churches, They just showered us with gifts. It was totally overwhelming. These are very poor people, but their generosity was absolutely astounding. You feel like celebrities when you're there. They just are so excited to have us there. And so the church visits in the evening were very, very precious times. We got back late in the evening, so didn't have too much time to just go over the day together, because the next morning we were up early again. But just the most amazing time together, and a great blessing to be together with the two Brads, and enjoy fellowship and be able to enjoy the whole experience together, and to be able to share it with someone. Then on the second last day of the conference, after Jim had ministered, he then concluded with a challenge, and in demonstration, he began to wash my feet. And there was an incredible move of God's Spirit as he demonstrated how leaders should become the least, and leaders are there to serve, not to be served. And he challenged that very definite problem in Africa, where men are in positions and hold on to positions, and men are in those positions to be served rather than to serve. And having washed my feet, we then began to wash one another's feet, and God just moved in the most amazing way as men just took basins and went to one another and began to remove their shoes and their socks and began to wash their feet. And throughout that conference at that time, we enjoyed the most amazing move of God's Spirit as people everywhere were just crying out to God, worshiping God. There were those that were weeping before the Lord, calling on the name of the Lord, and there was an incredible humbling that took place, and just such a beautiful moment that we enjoyed together. And then from there we went out, and Jim had bought a whole lot of basic food items and a big bale of clothes for children, and we went into the local communities, incredibly poor communities, and began to just distribute those items and share the love of God with those people. And we had the most amazing time as people came and received. And it was an incredible encouragement to the leaders, that the leaders could appreciate and understand how important it is to get into their local communities and to be able to share the love of God with those communities. And so an incredible afternoon that we enjoyed together, having gone out into those very, very poor communities and just shared the love of God. And just in conclusion, to thank the church for their incredible love and their support and the financing of this trip. It does cost to fly up into some of these countries. They are fairly remote, but we really want to give thanks to God for the church getting behind this vision, and really the encouragement in our hearts in terms of what God did was just so amazing. And I don't know if we can in some small way share that with the church who were a part of and together with us in the conference up in Abidjan. And so thanks to each one who got behind and supported in whatever way. We give thanks to God for that. And the vision has been so embraced by those nations. The unity that is developed among those men is absolutely beautiful. And there's no doubt that God is calling his church back to how it began in the beginning. Just a simple moving of God's Spirit upon the hearts of men and women to be light in this world. And as the apostles went out and shared that foundation given to them by the Lord Jesus, how so many embraced it, and they themselves rose up and went out. And we're really seeing God, through Gospel for Africa, drawing the church in Africa back to the apostolic foundation, so that when Jesus comes, the church will be, in the end, as it was in the beginning, just simply carrying out the Great Commission, going into all the world, preaching the gospel, baptizing men and women, and teaching them everything that the apostles had taught us. And so we give thanks to God that we can be a part of this most incredible vision that God has called us into in these last days.